Welcome to another exciting episode of the Getting Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me today, as always, is Mr. Andrew Callett.
You're not used to saying the new name, are you?
No, I'm not. Totally not. Well, I'm a little discombobulated here too because I'm on the run.
That's true. I see you're in some sort of undisclosed parkland with black helicopters circling in the background looking for you. Apparently,
But I thought your name was always Andrew Callett. Has that changed? Is that a new name for you?
Look, the spelling has adjusted. There's an umlaut in it now. Anyway.
Oh, all right. That's fancy.
I should introduce this wonderful third person we have to the show. But Jerry, our disclaimer, if you would, sir.
The thoughts and opinions we express on this show are ours and do not represent those of our employers. But perhaps they do, Mr. Greens.
Maybe they should.
Maybe they should.
Maybe not. No, I also the disclaimer. What I say does not represent the university system of Georgia or Kennesaw State University yet.
I love it. So, formally, everybody gets an introduction. You may know this fine gentleman. We are very happy to have on the show this week Mr. Andy Green, or Andrew Green, PhD. Do we call you doctor? What is the appropriate honorific? What would you like?
Green is fine. That's what everybody calls me. So,
all right.
I have a PhD, so that's fine.
Well, hey, that's a lot of work. You should be proud of that. All right. So, for background, a little bit of information about Mr. Green here. And I'm going to flatter you a little, and you can tell me what I get wrong. You earned your bachelor's in information systems, then earned a master's in information systems with an information security concentration from Kennesaw State. And then you followed that up, because you're a glutton for punishment, with a PhD in information systems with an information security concentration from Nova Southeastern University, which is just a lot of school. And you liked it so much. Now you have worked for the last, 16 years at Kennesaw State as various escalations up the chain of command in terms of being a teacher and a professor. And currently you're the assistant professor of information security and assurance at Kennesaw State University. And not only that, you are one of the organizers of the popular B-Sides Atlanta Security Conference held every year here in Atlanta. What'd I miss?
All guilty as charged on all counts.
That's fair. And so you have a really cool, interesting perspective that we don't often talk to, which is folks who are teaching the next generation of students of what to do in our crazy industry. And not only that, but you work on one of the big conferences around. So. And we like you. We've known you for a long time. And we figured, what better way than to torture you than to bring you on our show?
We'll see if we can end that friendship. We'll see if we can end that friendship during this podcast. We'll roll the dice and take the chances.
You got to pay the price for fame. If there's a few broken friendships along the way,
roll tide.
You didn't risk it.
How else are we going to get that Joe Rogan money?
Exactly. Joe Rogan.
Anyway. How are you, sir? Thank you for coming.
I'm happy to be here. I'm flattered to have been asked to join y'all's new fork of your existing podcast series, which I've been listening to for years. And I'm happy to talk about whatever we want to talk about, and hopefully I can contribute something positive so that people won't look at this one and say, "Yep, nope, this is the one that chased me off the podcast. We're not listening to this one." So.
We'll be sure to report our numbers and how they go. And
there you go.
If we go from 6 listeners down to 4,
you'll get a report card.
Blame me.
Get a report card.
That's fine. As long as I get a participation prize when we're done, I'm good.
So to kick us off, what took you down this crazy road to end up being a professor at Kennesaw State of InfoSec? What inspired you to go there, and how'd that happen?
It's an interesting question. So I was In a former lifetime, I was a high level soccer referee. I was doing international matches, national matches, professional, amateur. And along that line, I became a referee instructor. And so I got trained in some educational methodologies through the United States Soccer Federation and found that I enjoyed being in the classroom. And so I'd been teaching, soccer referees for years, and had just developed a taste for education in general. When I went back to school to finish my undergraduate degree, um, I was approached at the tail end of that degree and asked, "Hey, we've got money for a graduate research assistant. How do you feel about earning one of those master's thingies?" And of course, am I going to turn down a free master's degree? And the answer was, yeah. And so I became a graduate student and started working as a research assistant, and while pursuing the master's. And that was when I really started looking around at academia, saying, you know, I could do what these guys do. I could get used to this kind of I hate the term work life balance.
Mm.
Faculty work hard, but they are also able to do things remotely. We've got a great deal of flexibility. And I was seeing that. And at the same time, the university had just stood up an undergraduate degree in information security and assurance. At that time, it was the Bachelor of Science because we were in the College of Science and Math. And the program was growing. It hadn't been approved when I was finishing up my master's degree. Otherwise, I probably would have gotten the ISA degree. But it was spinning up and students were coming in, and I was watching that they were struggling to get people in to teach. And
Mm.
through conversations with the faculty I was working with, figured out that, there's probably a role for me here as an adjunct as soon as I finished my master's degree. And sure enough, the semester after I finished my master's degree, it threw me into the classroom and was teaching courses in the ISA program. And so I served as an adjunct, and what that means is I'm not a full time faculty member. I'm just given a course or maybe two to teach a semester. At that point in time, the university system had limitations on the number of courses through the year that an adjunct could teach. So we had to balance that workload throughout the year. And that went on for a couple of years, and the degree program kept growing and growing. And at that point in time, I was running my own consulting shop doing IT and cyber for small and medium businesses. So I had a great deal of flexibility. And I was approached about becoming a full time temporary instructor
Mm.
for a semester, which meant I would get a full course load, treated as an employee, but just, temporary limited term. And they asked if I was interested. And I said, yeah, let's do that. And so did that for, I want to say, 2 or 3 semesters. And then it became, can you commit for an academic year?
Mm.
And I said, yeah. Did that for a couple of years. And then finally, I just looked at them and said, can we just, and they said yes. And so had to get funding for a full time permanent line as a lecturer. And so I actually had to formally apply for what I considered in my head my job and be interviewed. And that was the first time I like to refer to, actually, the second time I like to refer to as fooling my colleagues into hiring me. Um, and so I worked, took that position as a non-tenure track lecturer because I didn't have a terminal degree, I didn't have a PhD. And I realized as the more I started with that, the more I enjoyed being in academia, right? Being able to help kids. I've got technical skills that, no disrespect to my colleagues, but you've got your niches, and my niche is technical. Most of my colleagues are policy driven or behavioral driven, and
Sure.
so being able to create lab environments, be able to write labs that you could implement in the academic coursework, that was where I really excelled because I had the ability and the desire to do it, and so I was doing these things and started to realize that, you know, and again, I'm looking around, I could do this for a career.
Hmm.
And that's when I realized I needed one of those PhD thingies, right? Because you've got to have one if you want to have any type of potential for job security long term. And so I went out and found a PhD program, enrolled in that, did my dissertation, and it really is fortunate that again we were also over time, right, we moved our degree program over to the business college. Our department split in that we were the computer science and information systems department. We had a friendly split. We just realized that we were two different groups of faculties, two different programs, and it didn't make sense for us to be together. So the IS
Hmm.
faculty, we created a space, or the university created a space for us in the College of Business, which is where we still are today, and we became the Department of Information Systems.
Oh, okay.
Uh, and so we've been in the College of Business now for a while, but the degree was growing, and then I forget exactly what the timeline was, but the Board of Regents came to us and said, "We want a 100% online degree in cybersecurity." Now,
Wow.
we already had at that point in time, we converted over to the BBA, Bachelor of Business Administration, because we were in the College of Business. So we tweaked the ISA degree program, and we had also created so that you could take it either in person or online.
Hmm.
And so when the word came down from on high that the Board of Regents wanted a online degree program in cyber, we said, "Hey, we've already got that, and it's the ISA program."
Hmm.
So that's adorable. We want an online degree in cybersecurity, right? And when the Board of Regents speaks, you know, so we created this multidisciplinary degree in cybersecurity, and that thing took off, right? So we've got the ISA program, we've got the cyber program, and student counts going through the roof. And what
Is
that
there a big Was there a big difference between these two programs, or is it kind of like marketing?
so
So the student counts take off,
yeah,
and
what I will say is the degree program was multidisciplinary in that we took content from the ISA program, we
yeah.
took content from the IT degree program, and we took content from the criminal justice program, and we put it all
Oh wow,
together. And
that's
it
cool.
was existing coursework,
Okay.
because we weren't given any additional resources to make this program. We were just told stand it up, and so roll tide, and here you
Right.
go. Um, so, but student enrollment count is going through the roof on both of them, right? Because the university system is pushing the cyber program as, hey, this is marquee, right? They were advertising it everywhere. Next thing you know, we're up over 1,000 students, head count wise,
Wow.
which is ridiculous. But what that told, by giving us those numbers, that also gave the department the ability to go and argue, hey, we need faculty lines, right? And I'm
Sure.
tying all this back into all this was going on while I was working on my PhD. And at the time I finished up my dissertation, I was what we say, I was on the job market. I was doing job talks at other universities, and we got approval to hire for two cybersecurity specific positions, tenure track, right as I was coming out. And so, of course, I interviewed, and this is, the third time I fooled my colleagues into hiring me, this time into a tenure track position as assistant professor, which is where I've been for the last few years. And I'm actually going up for tenure. That process will actually informally start in January with some conversations. And
Wow.
I turn in my packet over the summer, and it goes through a whole review thing. So, um, all of that to say, right? You asked how it goes and what got me started. This is the career path for me. Atypical, right?
Sure.
Most folks don't work like this. Most PhD graduates they're fresh out of their programs, and we're actually interviewing for two more cyber people right now, and I'm on the search committee for that. And they are they're young, they're eager, they're ready to go, and uh, they're following the more traditional career path. I definitely did not. I made things harder on myself wherever possible, because I'm an idiot.
But
Um,
it sounds like you got a lot of, for lack of a better term, real world industry experience before you went back into
yeah,
academia full time.
absolutely, I did. Yeah, and that's
And
that's one of the things that I like to chide my colleagues about is that hey, I used to work for a living. Wink and smile
right.
at them. And I do want it's easy to take shots at academia that we're in the ivory tower, and I'm not going to lie, we do have some folks in some places, some close to home, some not so close to home, where they do kind of function like that. But that's one of the things that I do, and that's when we start. If we get to my research, I always like to focus my research on making sure that I do something that's practical that I can put in y'all's hands and say,
Hmm.
this isn't just a theoretical concept that we're
Right.
studying here, right? I want to give, if I can take my research and put it in a practitioner's hands and say, here's something actionable, here's something you can actually operate on to try and make things a little better in whatever problem it was I was researching at that time, that for me is a good day, right? There's a need for for behavioral and theoretical research. It plays a role in what we do, and I think it helps inform business in other ways. But for me, right, I like to be able to say, Jerry, go do A, B, and C, right? And it's not just me; it's my research shows that, and we've collected data to support that. And maybe it works. Maybe you tweak it a little bit, but at least I'm giving you something applied and practical that you can hopefully roll into an organization to help make some aspect of what they're doing on the cyber front a little better, a little easier.
So
So
how do you?
No, that's
Sorry.
amazing. It's a great answer.
How do you pick your research topics?
I am. Oh Lord, have mercy. How do I pick my research topics? So the the hardened academics who have been in the trenches for a while will tell you that you have to have a convincing narrative to go along with your tenure and promotion packet, right? You have to be able to weave a story, right? We try and do that when we're writing our research, right? We don't just tell the facts. You want to tell an interesting story. You want to put a hook in it, just like you would with anything else, to draw the reader in, to draw their attention. You want to do the same thing with your career path. And so I have received counsel numerous times from really smart people saying you need to have a research stream. All sounds great, but I'm very much like the dog that chases the car. In that, if I find something interesting, I'm going to go do it. And I trust my instincts enough to know that if I find it interesting, that tells me on some level, I think this is useful for industry folks, for practitioners. I haven't
As
quite figured
opposed to like,
as
as
opposed
opposed to like staying one. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, as opposed to just staying in strictly one lane. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
what I have done is I've crafted a story that actually kind of sounds fairly convincing because it really is. Broadly speaking, my research interests are at the intersection, if you can picture a Venn diagram, of security, privacy, and public policy. And when I give job talks about what drives all this, I found a quote from uh, Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He gave a talk somewhere a few years back, and he put it in such great terms that every time somebody really wants me to present on why I'm doing what I'm doing, I pull that quote, and I wished I'd pulled it here in prep for this show. But it is effectively um, the next battleground is all around the First and the Fourth Amendment. And
Interesting.
security and privacy are going to
Yeah.
play huge roles in court decisions going into the future. And when I ran into that quote, I said, "Shit, that's it. He's much smarter than I am. He just said it perfectly." And so I grabbed that quote and I put it in a slide deck, and it's there for any time I need to give any type of why I do what I do talk or anything like that. But that for me is the battleground, right? And so when I see things like the paper that when we get to it, right, vulnerability disclosure policies, right, the real threats that researchers face when reporting a vulnerability they have found to a firm that they don't work with, right? They're just external researchers and they find a problem. You know, we've all heard the stories about researchers who have been arrested, sued, right? The literal pre-dawn knock on the front door from the FBI,
Sure.
right? And this cat, which city just got ransomware? And they sued the researcher. That's ongoing. He just signed a settlement. They
Yeah.
just reached a settlement agreement. I forget, what was it, Cleveland or
It
someplace?
was
But
Columbus,
yeah,
Ohio.
city attorney turned around and sued Columbus. Yeah, Columbus. And so they turned around and sued him, right? And they negotiated a settlement. all because he had the nerve to publicly challenge what the mayor was saying in terms of the accessibility of the data after the I forget which ransomware group hit him, but after that data was put out on the dark web, and the mayor saying, well, no, it's malformed, that you can't read it, we can't open the files, they're all fragged, and the researcher said, yeah, no, they're not. I can open them all up. And he tried to contact the city, and they didn't want to hear about it. He contacted the media. Next thing you know, he's charged. I believe he was criminally charged.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I may be wrong about that. It may have been a civil action, but yeah, he was in the crosshairs of the city attorney, and they just negotiated a settlement. And he's one of the things is he's not ever allowed to share that data with anybody anywhere ever. Which I just
even though it's
those kinds of
publicly
things
available. Which is crazy. Even though it's publicly available, he has a court order that says he can't talk about it or disclose it to anybody.
Yep, because their argument is that, well, it takes a certain degree of technical acumen to go find that data. Not just anybody can find it. Like,
does it though?
Well, you got to click
12-year-old with a Tor browser. Roll
you got to click the connect button on the Tor browser. That's what it takes. Like, that's the thing.
So
operating a mouse. Yeah, that's fair.
And having an interwebs connection. Yeah. Makes you a domestic terrorist, evidently. So,
we started.
Go ahead.
No. We started to talk about this. It's a great time to jump into like some of the examples, some of the research you did. We know you just put out a recent paper, and would love to talk about that a bit. And Jerry's still hiding from. I think there's a cheetah trying to sneak up on him from the background currently. So if Jerry's taken by a large,
it might be a cougar.
Could be. He is in Florida. So Jerry, if you get eaten by a large animal while we're on our show, I mean, I'm sorry, I'll feel terrible, but our ratings will be.
I was going to say that'll be a massive spike for your ratings.
I mean, so choose wisely.
Yeah, let's just say there's a lot.
Either way, we're going to enjoy it.
There's a lot of cougars around me right now.
Well,
fair enough.
Roll Tide.
And just for the record, if you don't know, Jerry is in the middle of expanding his southern compound at an undisclosed location, and apparently the construction noise is so bad he literally had to go find a state park to record today. So we appreciate your efforts there, Mr. Bell.
The struggle is real, buddy, and we know.
But back to Mr. Green's research.
So the paper that I shared with y'all is it's driven very much by the concerns that researchers face, and I've been in this jackpot myself without rehashing the past. Right, I played a small role in the voter registration kerfuffle at the university a few years back, and I ended up having to hire a criminal defense attorney because the FBI had been called in by the governor's office.
Wow.
And so, I never for one second thought I had done anything illegal or improper, right? I notified our campus CISO as soon as I was notified by my friend who actually discovered the problem. But, when all of a sudden you hear about this incident on the news at noon on a Friday, and it's being badly described like the university was attacked by a hacker, things broke sideways for a while. And at that point in time, I was a lecturer, right? I was working on my PhD, didn't have the protection of tenure or anything like that. Not that even that would have protected me if somebody, decided I needed to go. I guess they could have, but at the end of the day, right, I was cleared of any wrongdoing. There were no federal charges, no evidence of a crime, but just the fact that I was kind of floating out there, nobody from the university was talking to me. Nobody from the FBI was talking to me outside of, the interview that we did in my attorney's office. And that was 2 months of It was a pretty intense period. Came out of it fine, and I'm thankful that I did what I did, and I'm thankful I did it how I did it. And people ask me, "Would you do that again?" The answer is yes, right?
Do you want
Because
to give a little quick recap of what happened?
I can. So at one point in time, the university had an agreement with the state of Georgia, the Secretary of State's office, to basically manage election and voting systems for the state. It was the Center for Election Systems.
Hmm.
And so, they were tasked with I'm really not really super clear on what they did because that wasn't, my thing. But they had a public facing website up that kind of talked about, what they do and everything. Turns out they were using that website to share files in what they thought was a password restricted area for county election officials, right? Nothing unusual, nothing, it's the kind of thing that you would think would happen all the time. Turns out that you could bypass the user authentication by URL manipulation.
Oops.
And so, yeah, and so um, all kinds of data and voter registration data for every registered voter in the state was hung on the website. Again, they thought it was behind a password protected area, and it wasn't. And so, a buddy of mine actually found the problem. He pings me because he doesn't know anybody at the university, right?
Sure.
And I won't tell you what I said to him as he's telling me this because I immediately thought this isn't going to be good and this is not good, and it wasn't. I verified what he told me, and then I turned around and contacted our campus chief information security officer, and within half an hour of me, and this is like 9 o'clock at night, like on a Wednesday night. I pinged him and I said, I've got something. We need to talk about it. And he knows me well enough to know that I don't just ring a bell haphazardly. And
Sure.
within half an hour of our conversation, university had the website fired off firewalled off from outside access, and so I couldn't hit it from the house anymore. And so um, then the investigation happened. Right, the FBI came in, and it was just it was a whole thing. And again, um, I wasn't charged. What was interesting was that in the next legislative cycle, the following year in Georgia, um, so this was all like January, February, March, April, May, right in that time frame. The following
Hmm.
January, the state legislature goes into session, and I became aware of Senate Bill 315, and that was a bill designed in direct response to what me and my buddy and his buddy, who had also helped work with him on the problem that they found, state officials found out they couldn't charge us with a criminal
Uh-oh.
offense, and they very much wanted to. And so their resolution was to put up Senate Bill 315. And I watched the testimony at the subcommittee that had been handed the bill for consideration. And the state attorney general's office representative said point blank, we wanted to arrest them, but we couldn't. And that was when I realized, holy shit. I mean, you were trying to do the right thing. Representative from the state attorney general's office testified that they were looking for a reason to charge the three of us criminally for our actions, and they
That's
couldn't.
crazy.
And so Senate Bill 315 was their response to that. And fortunately, it went through both houses of Congress. My own, at the time, state senator was a co-sponsor of the bill and refused to meet with me. I had a meeting scheduled with him, and he stood me up,
So
which
just because you were in the reporting chain that somebody externally found this, reported to you because they knew you were contacting the university, you reported to the proper authorities, and now somehow you're criminally liable for this situation?
that seemed to be the gist of what they wanted to have happen. Yes, and they could not
Wild.
charge us, and so they thought they were fixing a problem, right?
Hmm.
From their perspective, they thought what we were doing was bad, and they wanted to fix it. Now,
Wow.
of course, obviously, philosophically, I disagree with that.
Sure.
Um, and I would have welcomed the opportunity to have had that conversation with my state senator if he had been professional and respectful of his constituents enough to actually honor a meeting that he had scheduled. But
Wow.
that never happened, unfortunately. And so, The
So
bill
this led
ultimately,
to.
yeah,
Sorry,
it
go
got
ahead.
to the governor's desk.
Wow.
It was approved both houses. Google and Microsoft wrote a joint letter asking asking the governor to veto that. Now, when's the last time you saw Google and Microsoft write a joint letter for anything?
Oh,
Right.
seriously.
And so, yeah, they jointly signed a letter asking him to veto it. And Governor Deal thankfully did veto it.
Wow.
Right. So, when I talk about, and all of this to come back to, I wasn't necessarily a vulnerability researcher in the truest sense in this scenario, right? It was just, he knows me socially, right?
Right. Sure.
And so he doesn't know who else at the university to contact, um, which leads us to, how do we help researchers? Like, if my buddy if we had had a VDP at the university at the time, right, he could have followed that,
Yeah.
right? But at that point in time, VDPs were kind of I don't even think if they were a thing then, it was early days.
Hmm.
Um, but the idea of having a vulnerability disclosure policy that researchers can read, access, follow, and that it provides safe harbor, right? When Mr. or Mrs. Researcher or Ms. Researcher, when you do things the way we've lined it out in the policy, we give you assurances that we're not going to sue you civilly. We're not going to go to law enforcement and ask to file criminal charges, right? We're going to take what you give us, and we're gonna hopefully fix it.
Right.
Um, that takes a lot of the stress out of the balloon for researchers, right? Because can you just imagine? Like, I will tell you point blank, I have found other things since then. I'm not reporting them.
Yeah. That's
I'm just
unfortunate.
not.
Yeah.
Unless I happen to know a person in that organization who I know I can trust, and I know that their overall philosophy won't be to punish me,
Right.
right? In that scenario, I would engage with sharing my findings with them. But otherwise, it's too chilly. And
So
so, that led us to the research that we did for
yeah.
on VDPs.
So what was the research focus and what were the findings?
Yeah, so as you can tell, that's a hell of a hook to put into a research paper. So I didn't use
Yeah.
my hook, but we talk about the very real fact that researchers, they roll the dice, right? Sometimes they're patted on the head. Sometimes the FBI is literally banging their door down and confiscating equipment.
Wow.
Um, and so we started to ask the question, what can we do here, right? What
Hmm.
if I were a researcher, right? What would motivate me to report my findings to an organization that I don't work with, or not report? And so, um, my neighbor is standing in his backyard and he's calling me right now. I'm sorry. We'll let that
That's
go for
okay.
a little bit.
Okay.
And so this is where we got nerdy in a couple of different places in the research,
Yeah.
because you have to. Um, and so we looked at a behavioral theory called the protection motivation theory, or
Mm.
PMT. And PMT it comes from the psychological literature, and it explores what would motivate a person who perceives a threat in a situation to act or not act,
Okay.
right? And we have taken PMT in the cybersecurity space and applied it in the context of how can organizations get their employees, their workers, to engage in safe cybersecurity hygiene practices, whatever word you want to use to describe it this month,
Hmm.
right? And so the focus with PMT in the cyber literature has been internal to the organization, right? Where the organization obviously has some controls and some strings they can pull on people because they work there. I asked the question, what if we took PMT and applied it differently? What if we applied it in the context of people who don't work for the organization,
Mm.
but the organization still wants to properly motivate their behavior such that these researchers are encouraged to report, right? So it's
Gotcha.
kind of an inverse, right? We can use threats and coercion inside, right? But outside, big deal, right? What are you going to?
Yeah.
I'm not talking to you. I'm not telling you what I found. You don't even know I exist. And the reason you don't know I exist is that I get a bad, unwarm, fuzzy feeling about talking to your firm because I found a problem, right? And in a perfect world, the organization would want to know about these problems, right? So that they could address them, fix them, and move down the road to keep everything as secure as possible. In a perfect
Sure.
world, that's what we would want. Now, obviously, we know the reality is that it's not just, there are other concerns and constraints that business leadership have, right? Like reputational damage, public relations, right? Loss of confidence in the marketplace. So there are actually some reasons why they may not want to know about these problems,
Mm-hmm.
because they can then turn around and say, "Oh no, we were attacked by APTs," right? Because that's just the easiest thing known to mankind, right?
Yep.
I was compromised by an APT. Well, the APT turned out to be a 12-year-old named Buford in the basement,
No, it was
right?
North Korea. There was nothing I could do. It was North Korea
That's
the
right.
whole time.
It's the North Korean Buford. Yes.
Right.
Is that Buford Highway?
Mm,
Anyway,
could be. Mm.
um, so that was really the genesis of our research, and I worked with a couple of really smart colleagues, much smarter than I am. Dr. Amy Wazinski here at Kennesaw State University, and then Dr. DJ Oliver, who graduated from our PhD program at Kennesaw State,
Mm.
and is now an assistant professor at North Carolina A&T. Both have worked in the security space as well, um, and so we started to ask these, what could our research question be, right? And so we ended up landing on what would move a researcher to intend to report a finding through the lens of PMT. And so straight pure PMT as a theory doesn't really apply here,
Hmm.
um, because it's inverted in a sense. And I refer to it as inverted, but we really modified, we extended PMT. And we came up with the vulnerability disclosure, discovery and disclosure model, the VDD model.
Hmm.
But what we ended up doing was we put together a survey, Qualtrics survey with a bunch of 7-point Likert scale questions. And our target audience for the survey was active vulnerability researchers based here in the United States who had reported in the last 24 months. So they had some recency, right?
Hmm.
And we asked them a series of questions related to where we were trying to tease out how did they feel fear wise, both to themselves and what threats did they perceive to the organization if they didn't report it,
Interesting.
right? And so we were asking a series of questions, going through all of the constructs of PMT. And our thought was that, well, the researchers obviously are going to be concerned about the threat to themselves, right? But they're not really going to care so much about the organization. They're just going to say, well, they don't know, and that's it. We were dead wrong.
Really?
Yeah, turns out that vulnerability researchers do actually take into account the perceived threat that they see to the organization as well.
Hmm.
And now that I've had some time to actually think about it, um, I can actually see that that's right, because when I come back to my specific case, right, I knew this was going to be a jackpot. We're talking about election data in an election year, right? I
S-
knew this was going to be a problem.
Slightly divisive.
Yeah. But yet
Yeah.
at the same time, I knew if I didn't report this, right, I got to be able to sleep at night. And
Yeah.
if I know that this data for all the registered voters in the state is exposed, um, what kind of guy am I, right? What kind of moral authority do I have to stand up in front of a group of undergraduates and say, listen, you're in a sensitive position. You're expected to behave at a higher level of
Hmm.
performance and ethical behavior because you've got keys to data
Hmm.
that the rest of the world doesn't, and you're expected to protect that stuff, right? And so, in my moment of truth, right, where I'm presented with a real world scenario, for me to do anything other than what I did, uh, yeah, I couldn't live with that, right? And so I take that back to what we found in the findings for the study. As I sit here and think about it over time, I've come to realize, yeah, that kind of does make sense, because yes, it was a risk to me. I knew that, but I also knew that the bigger risk was to society. In my instance, the state of Georgia, because that data was out there, and so Yeah, I had to hire a criminal defense attorney. Yes, I spent a few $1,000s. Yes, I had some sleepless nights, but I still did it and I would do it again.
Yeah.
And so um, we also asked researchers questions like, what would you like to see in a VDP in
Hmm.
terms of what would you like, what would make you feel more comfortable? Because again, we want to create an environment where it's not adversarial, where
Right.
it's not unclear or ambiguous, right? And when you roll that, when you step that back, you look at the state of federal legislation across the board, right? Lord have mercy, right? We're looking at the CFAA, we're looking at the DMCA, right? And those things have been used to target people. And,
Yeah.
we're all in the industry, we all know those stories, and so all of that helps contribute to an atmosphere where I don't want to report. So what would help you as a researcher report? And so we got those details, and we reported on those as well. And it it sounds common sense, like when I say what I'm about to say, but you would be surprised, or y'all wouldn't be surprised because you know this game, but there are lots of voices sitting at the table when a policy is written, right? It's
Yeah.
not just cyber, right? You've got risk management, you've got legal, right? You've got all of these voices at the table, and legal, by and large, is telling you, don't say anything, don't put anything in writing, don't admit anything ever, right? Risk management is saying, I don't know, if we're told about it and we don't fix it soon enough, that might expose us, right? So
Right.
you've got all these competing interests at the table as this policy is being written. And for organizations that do have VDPs, a lot of them are so vaguely written that you don't know what the hell they're saying,
Yeah.
right? And so one of our findings was use use everyday language, like you're a couple of people sitting around a table having a drink talking about a problem, right? Yes, legal should weigh in on it, but don't let a lawyer write it.
Right. Sure.
Because
Yeah.
they're gonna take 2 pages to say what you can say in 2 sentences. And for the attorneys out there, love you. I'm dumb enough that I'm actually thinking about going to law school once I finish tenure and promotion. Because did I mention I'm an idiot? I really am. I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I am, but
Wow.
I'm an idiot. I'm
Well,
there's something wrong with me.
but I
No,
mean,
don't
you're
answer
a
that.
well-motivated idiot, which you can get a lot done.
Well, that is true because
I'm
I'm really smart.
exhausted. I'm exhausted just hearing about your plans. I don't get it, but hey,
I,
whatever
listen,
you're eating and drinking, I need it.
well, because we're doing this right the night before Halloween. I accidentally raided the candy, and so I'm eating little baby Twix
Nice.
bars now. So, um, but common sense language. It's clear, right?
Yeah.
Carve out a clear, a safe harbor provision where you make it clear in no uncertain terms that for the systems or the environments that we've scoped out, right? These are
Hmm.
in scope for the VDP,
Hmm.
right? Here's how you're going to report to us, right? Here's how we're going to respond, right? Here's what we're going to ask you to not do while we're investigating, right? Like embargo, right? Black hole it for some period of time, and then to offer that safe harbor and clear reporting, safe harbor, and an easy reporting process were the
Hmm.
big things that researchers came back to us and said, you give us these things, we're more likely to report our findings than not.
What about bug bounty payouts? Did that seem to have any impact?
So we look at those differently, right? Because a
Yeah.
bug bounty is very closely related to vulnerability disclosure, but
Hmm.
they're two different things, right? You can have a
Sure.
VDP without a bug bounty, but you
Sure.
can't really have a bug bounty without some kind of VDP in some way, shape, or form. And
Sure.
so we only looked at vulnerability disclosure policies themselves. We
Got
may
it.
get into bug bounties down the road, um, but right now, an interesting byproduct of this is that when we put the survey together, um, we all three socialize them through our social media channels. Now,
Hmm.
because I spend an inordinate amount of time on the Twitters and the Mastodons and everything, right? I seem to have attracted a small but loyal following of lunatics and good people, and then you two, right? So, and we also offered to pay for completed responses.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so we put that survey up at like noon on a Monday, and by
Hmm.
1 o'clock we had over 2,000 responses. Like we
Wow.
immediately knew something was wrong,
Huh.
right?
Yeah.
So we paused the survey. We started asking, what the hell's going on? And then we realized, oh shit, we offered to pay money. So yeah, we're getting hit by bots. And we started looking at the details on the response times and all that. Sure enough, we got botted. And so a byproduct of this was that we had to figure out how to differentiate between bot responses and legitimate responses. And
Wow.
that's actually going to be an interesting paper to write for survey nerds, because we
Sure.
developed a multi-step process that we're comfortable led us down to. We ended up with, we went from over 2,000, and by the time we went through our process, whittled it down to, I think it was 119, 120 that we were sure were, or comfortable were legitimate responses, which seems about right because there aren't a lot of vulnerability researchers, period. Definitely not 2,400 or so in 90 minutes.
I
Um,
didn't know how to tell you, but I did notice there was a vulnerability in your survey methodology, but I didn't know how to tell you.
English, small
VDP.
words, because I'm
There's
not
no
that smart. Yeah. So that's going to end up being another study. We also, what we did was we engaged in what we call an exploratory study, right? This was exploratory research, and so the next step is to pivot slightly and engage in a confirmatory phase to make sure
Mhm.
that the findings that we've got are actually what we think. And so we're probably going to move next in those two directions. Um, and then, by then I will find another car to chase and another bone to nibble on. But there are all kinds of research problems out there
Yeah,
So
right? There are
that's
all
really
kinds.
that's
in
really
this
interesting.
instance,
Yeah. Go ahead, Jerry.
you just described a very interesting bit of research. So now, do you work with some industry partners to test that out? What happens what happens to that research next?
Right. So I do things like talk about it, like here, like I did last week at Cobb County Cybersecurity Day, um, and I just share it. Right. The next step, like I said, will be to run the confirmatory phase of our
Okay.
research to validate that our findings that we found in the exploratory phase are actually in scope. Right. From there, right, the next step would be to potentially partner with industry. But this is an area, if you stop to think about everything that you need to have in place to actually deal with vulnerability reporting, right, that's a heavy lift for an organization, right? They
Mhm.
can't just say, okay, we're open for reporting, right? They've got to have a way to manage triage. Do they have resources to address, do they have resources to prioritize? Do they have resources to actually do the work, right? And so organizations have to make sure that their ducks are aligned appropriately before they even do this. And once they start looking at the costs associated with it, they may make the business decision that the juice isn't worth the squeeze here, and we're just not going to do it. So, you could theoretically reach out to organizations that have what you would consider bad VDPs, right? That don't check off the things that we found in our research and offer our paper up and say, hey, here you go. We'd like to help you. But who knows how that would go. But at the end of the day, there's a limitation to what we can do as academics in terms of getting our research out there, right? Because most people have a negative opinion of academic research, and especially in this discipline because it moves so quickly and it takes so long to get research through the peer review process that, I mean, it took us 2 years to get this. It took us two
Wow.
years to get this thing written, conceptualized, tightened up, data collected, data analyzed, written up, and then sent out to a journal. Now, we were very fortunate. We hit on the first journal we submitted to. They just said, yeah,
Nice.
right. The reviewers came back and they were very complimentary because, again, this really is kind of a novel, right? The big thing in academia is how novel is your research, right? And most people will just kind of take a problem and tweak it like 5, 10 degrees. Oh, it's novel, right? But we kind of took PMT and twisted it and applied it to this scenario, which really was a novel approach to looking at this problem. And the reviewers were very complimentary. We had very minor reviews, and within 2 months of us getting the first draft in, we were done, which is unheard of.
Hmm.
I've got colleagues who are doing theoretical research where they are going through 5 and 6 rounds of reviews, and they're 5 and 6 years in.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's wild.
it
That's
is.
just that's
Yeah,
amazing to me.
yeah. But when you think about that, right, it inhibits our ability to do timely quality research and get it out there for our industry
Sure.
to be able to utilize. I don't
Well,
have the fix for that.
but here's the flip
Actually,
side.
I do, but nobody wants to listen to me, right?
I mean, this could be a whole nother hour long conversation, so I will not go too far into this rabbit hole. But the flip side is most of the research that is presented in the cybersecurity industry is some vendor walking around at some random conference and asking the random people on the floor some set of questions and then producing through their marketing department this self-reinforcing sales pitch based on research study that they conducted on the floor of whatever random conference they were at, which is crap.
Right. Yeah,
Sorry,
it
crap.
is. And one of the things that you learn in a PhD program, a well built PhD program, is actually how to do quality research,
Yeah.
right? How to address the limitations that are present in your research, right? Like one of the big limitations is um, it was a convenient sample for us, right? We have no way of knowing what the actual population size is, right? The total number of researchers in the country that met our criteria. We
Right.
don't know what the population is. Therefore, to determine whether or not your sample size is appropriate is much more difficult. And so we had to use some other statistical methodologies
Yeah.
to prove that our sample size was statistically relevant enough to warrant making the claims that we made in the study.
For
And
your
so,
follow up,
mhm.
have you considered just arresting all the researchers in the country? And then once you have them in jail, you can count them successfully and then query them and then let them go? Is that what do
I
you think?
could, right? We could.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alternatively, and hear me out on this, we could not.
Hmm.
It's a thought, right? So,
There's probably a reason why I don't
well, listen,
won't
it's
do
not for a
research.
lack of trying, especially in Georgia. So,
Well, we we have burned almost an hour on this, and it's fascinating. I'm really glad we went down this topic. I had a whole list of other questions, and I know people yell at me if I don't ask you about Atlanta B sides.
well, ask whatever you want to. Like my
Yeah.
headache has gone. Literally talking with you guys has made my headache go away. 5 minutes after we're done, the headache will come back. But
Is
that's
that
fine.
mainly because we've caused so much other pain that you've forgotten about the headache?
I think it's more emotional scarring, not so much
Yeah,
pain, but just
It's
emotional
not. It's
scarring.
that's
nausea.
fair. I mean, it could
Nausea
be
now.
Yeah,
looking at us.
it's waves of nausea. Yes.
Um,
So,
we will certainly have you back to talk more about this, assuming people like this format of the show. I hope they do
yeah.
because I think this is fascinating and incredibly valuable content, stuff Jerry and I would never know to talk about.
So
So thank you.
before you pivot,
Um,
is there a is there a
yeah,
way people can learn more about your research before we pivot to B sides?
good, very good question.
Absolutely. So I run my own website, andygreen.phd. Very clever name. Very clever. I thought of that
Hey,
myself, right?
that's cool.
Um, and
Soon to
and
be
I am
andygreen.phu, right?
that will be next. .phd.esq if I'm dumb enough to do it. Yeah. Um, I am I actually sign over. We all sign over copyright ownership of our research to the journal, and so we're restricted from how we can share it. We can still share it, but I will simply say that you can find my contact details on the website, and I'll give you my work address. It's agreen57 agreen57 at kennesaw.edu, or you can use andy.green. They both get to me at kennesaw.edu. If you want a copy of the paper, I can distribute it via email just like that. Drop me an email, and I'll be happy to send you a PDF of the study. That I
Okay.
can do. Um, I have also linked to content from presentations that I've done. I've actually put a slide deck together for this paper that I've used in the last couple of talks, and that's available on my website as well. I share those. They're out there PDFs under the presentations link on the website. And I've also got a link for if you want to go take a look at my research. It'll show you a list of research that I've done and published. And again, I'm happy to share anything with anybody via email. I can do that all day long, and I'm not violating any copyright agreements to do that. I just can't like hang it out on the website and say yeehaw, everybody in the world can download it, unless I go the open source route, which costs money, and our university doesn't want us to do that, so I don't ever go the open source route. So,
No
but
worries.
yeah, it's all out there. You can take a look at it, and as you'll see, I'm literally the dog that chases the car. If I find something interesting, I run it down. And so you'll see from if you go look at my research history, I poked around in emergency alert systems a few years back and found some problems. And yeah, I got tipped off to that by an employee. At the time, he was an employee of another state institution, and I had no relationship with him. But he reached out to me again, going back to the role that I played with the Center for Election System stuff. Somehow he found out my name. My name didn't actually get out there for years, but somehow he found my name and said, "Hey, since you're doing all this whistleblower stuff," and it wasn't whistleblower stuff, but he said,
It
"Hey,
is now.
yeah, you need to go look at emergency alert systems," and I'll be damned if he wasn't right.
Interesting.
We found a number of EAS management systems publicly accessible on the web. Yeah, thank you, Shodan. And so we crafted a couple of different papers for that. One was for the technical audience, right? What you should do to protect that. And then the second paper we wrote off for that was for the managerial folks, right? Here's why this is a bad idea. Here's how you should approach these things. Here are the threats that can come from this, like being able to, if I wanted to brute force my way into that system, I could have launched, a fake alert. Right, I could have canceled an alert, right, because it's the management system for that EAS instance. Wow. And so, we found that. I've just done all kinds of goofy stuff, but it was interesting, right? And again, it goes back to, it's a bad day if somebody fires a false emergency alert of some type.
But look, kudos on you for not launching a zombie alert.
Yet.
Tomorrow, at least to the day we're recording this, tomorrow is Halloween, so
it is. And also, I will have you know that October 31st is Coach Nick Saban's birthday. Roll Tide.
Very good. That was an elegant segue. That was just a good little.
Yes.
That's why I'm here. I'm here for the segues
we'll
and
try
the twist.
We will try to get your website, your address, and your email address in the show notes as well.
Okay.
So before we wrap up entirely, you've been involved with Besides Atlanta for a while. Anything you want to say on the show there, and how people could help out for the next conference, or how they can get involved?
Yeah, we actually put a call out the prior conference, right? We just had 2024 last month.
Yeah.
And at the 2023 event, we put out a call for volunteers. We said we needed help. There's three of us, right? There's Yvette Johnson, Joetta LaSure, and me. And we had been trying to run everything ourselves. And I just said, we can't do this.
Yeah.
And we put out a call for volunteers, and a lot of people put their hands up. And it was a much easier event to run 2024 as a result of that. But we as organizers are still learning how to function like that. And so to those folks who have supported us and helped us, thank you. You actually listened to, I painted a pretty dire picture at the end of 2023, the closing remarks. Were either one of y'all there that year? Okay, were you there for the closing?
I don't know that I was.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Sorry.
So at the closing, I put up a slide deck with some numbers, and it wasn't a pretty picture. Sponsorship was way down. Volunteer count was way down. And we said, this is the community's event, right? We're just the current idiot caretakers. There were people before us and there will be people after us, but we're in a position where we cannot continue like this. And collectively, right, people put their hands up and said, I want to help. And so we got somebody to focus on on sponsorship and fundraising for that through the roof.
Nice.
We had volunteer coordinators for certain areas, performed admirably, right? It took the load off of the three of us. We could be more strategic,
Hmm.
and these folks are more tactical, right? So we set the overall direction, and they were able to execute. Now we did, and I'm not telling stories out of school here because I've said this to Joe and Yvette. We did a lousy job of putting these people in a position for success,
Hmm.
and so we've got to do a better job next year. But we had more than 500 folks in attendance at some point in time during the day,
Wow.
more than 500. And in the facility that we're in, and we've got a partnership with Kennesaw State University and my department of my college. Um, we had some struggles there this year. We had some internal struggles and we had some external struggles that led us to actually publicly announcing we were postponing. And then within 24 hours, the things that caused us to make that announcement magically got fixed.
Hmm.
And so we were then able to bring it back up again. And so we're looking to avoid that. We've got growing pains, right? We're
Yeah.
at the KSU Center on campus, and we're physically constrained by space there, right? The classroom sizes are just standard 30, 40 seaters. Where do you put 500 people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we've got growing pains. We want to stay affiliated with the university. I think the university wants us to stay affiliated for them because it checks off some of the university's long-term goals. University President Schweig, Kat Schweig, has released her strategic plan and has said that she wants KSU to be a destination venue for events of regional and national importance. Well, hello, B-sides.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm really concerned that we have outgrown the KSU Center,
Wow.
which
Yeah.
is a good problem to have, but it's still a problem. And so we're going to have to. I needed a nap after this year's events, man. I was just running ragged, and so
Yeah.
we need to figure out how the university, is there a space on campus that we can use that fits our needs? If not, can we partner with somebody who the university or the college has got an arrangement with, where they've got access to venue space that makes sense so that we can do the things we need to do? All of that's in the air. These are all good problems to have,
Hmm.
um, but they're problems that we need to address because I'm just I'm concerned that if we get to 600 next year, which is possible, I, do we just take over the entire KSU Center for the day? I don't know,
Yeah.
right? But what I can tell you is that lobby con and hallway con is good, but I want people in these rooms seeing this content because that's what they're here for. And if we can't
Sure.
physically accommodate them, then we've got to figure something out.
Yeah.
And I don't. Again, great problem to have, and it's all due to the support from the community and our sponsors, and the presenters, because we don't pay anybody anything, right? We don't charge admission, right? It's a free event to the public. And so we rely heavily on sponsorship dollars, volunteer content from presenters. We don't pay for travel,
Hmm.
right? We don't pay for hotel rooms. So if you're coming in from out of state, you're doing so at your own dime. We put together a nice speaker dinner for you Friday night and we give you some tchotchkes.
Hmm.
But we run pretty lean, right? We feed everybody, we provide t shirts, we buy giveaways, right? That kind of thing. But we run pretty lean. And so if we have to start, we pay next to nothing for the KSU Center, right? We've got to pay for like cleanup and things like that, table setup, but they don't charge us for rooms. Um, and parking is free, which everybody loves because where can you park in Metro Atlanta for free?
Right.
Um, so if we start looking at other venues, we're going to see, increased costs, um, and just a change of everything. And what impact will that have on our ability to continue this as a free event? I don't know.
Yeah.
These are all tough questions that we're going to have to address, because as I like to call us, we're your friendly neighborhood, conference organizers, right? This is your friendly
Sure.
neighborhood security conference, and it has that intimate feel, which I like and I think is important. And I'm just concerned that if we get to the point where we're expanding out to 6, 7, 800, right? people are coming, and that's great. And we've got the space to put them in, and we've got the rooms, and the presenters can do all that. But it starts to feel more like a corporate event as opposed to just a bunch of idiots getting together on a Saturday
Yeah.
and eating barbecue and listening to content and picking locks.
Yeah.
And maybe that does need to change. Maybe that's the evolution that needs to happen. Um, I just don't know. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I think the three of us will talk about it, and we'll try and figure out what we think is best. And hopefully, the community will have enough faith. Either they'll have enough faith in us that we're doing the right thing, that they won't mess with us, or they're just going to realize that's a shit ton of work and we don't want to do it. So we'll let those people do it, and we don't care what they do. We're just along for the ride. Either way.
Well, if anybody listening to this show can help, I guess reach out to you on your email.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, for B-side stuff,
Yeah.
my email, I'll give you my email address for that is andy@bsidesatl.info.
Okay. We'll put that in the show
So
notes.
that's there. And we've got the website up, bsidesatl.info. We also have a Discord server. We also have a LinkedIn page. Right, we're on all the socials. We've got
Nice.
we're on Mastodon. We have a Twitter account. Because of all the shenanigans with Twitter, now X, I made the personal decision to move away from that, and I kind of forced the conference to go that way. But a lot of folks are hanging out still in the Twitter security space or the X security space. So I may need to just let that one go and say to our social media manager, put it everywhere.
Yeah.
And, just go with it. But yeah, we're out there, and we're thankful for the support, thankful for the engagement from everybody. And we have not set dates for 2025 yet because it's we don't know what venue we're going to be in. B, if we do stay in the KSU Center, I have to work around multiple academic programs because first and foremost, those are classroom spaces. Mm-hmm. And once those degree programs get their dates set, then I can work around that. It's kind of like it's a puzzle with a lot of moving pieces. And so, but I was able to get the date set February this year for September, and we're probably looking at something close to that for 2025. Sometime in February, we'll probably have the date set, if not before then.
Nice.
So
stay tuned.
If you want to help, we would love to have you. Yeah, stay tuned. Get active in the Discord server. Reach out to me, be ready for 2025.
Nice.
By the way, it's a great conference. For those who haven't been there, it's a great conference, and definitely worth your time. And my hat's off to you and your co-chairs.
Oh yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Thank you. It is without the content, it's nothing, right? It's just a bunch of people sitting around tables and eating Dreamland barbecue, right? So really, all the thanks goes to the researchers who put their content together and are willing to share it for free. And the sponsors who are willing to pay for the things that we want to give away for people to attend and to make the event free. So that's, the bulk of the work is just logistics, but without the content, we're nothing. And so, we're very thankful for that. And we hope that we'll continue to receive that kind of good support from the community overall.
Nice. Well, hey, I want to be respectful of your time. This has been an amazing conversation.
Been fun.
If somebody wanted to find you on the socials, what's the best way to find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Andy Green, PhD. I've branded myself. I'm Andy Green, PhD. I'm on X. I have an X account. I don't really monitor it. I'm on Jerry's Mastodon server.
Nice.
I'm Andy Green, PhD at infosec.exchange.com/au.edu.net. Did I get that right?
I think so.
You nailed it.
Is that right? Yeah. Nailed it. And then I'm in multiple Discord servers, right? I'm in the Atlanta Cybersecurity Engineers Discord. I'm in a Discord server that I run for my students and the KSU security community. I'm in the B-Sides Atlanta Discord. So I'm
you're around.
I'm around. I can be found in it.
Excellent.
Awesome.
And there are actually links to all that stuff, I think, on my website as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Andy. It's been a great conversation. And
this has been fun.
Yeah, much appreciated. Amazing content. I didn't know where this conversation was going. I'm glad it went where it did because this was really cool. and we'd love to have you back soon.
Well, I'm always around, always happy to help. But I've been a big fan of y'all's podcast for at least 15 minutes now, and it's been it's been extremely rewarding.
That's amazing.
We'll pay you later.
On that note, if you like our new show, tell a friend. It's a brand new format. It's a new feed. Give us some love on the rating service of your choice. Watch it on YouTube, whatever you want. We're trying to build a new fan base for the show in the new format. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Love to hear from you. And you know where to find me on Twitter /X at Lurg, L-E-R-G, on infosec.exchange at Lurg, L-E-R-G. Jerry, Mr. Jerry at infosec.exchange, I believe, right?
That's right.
And I'm just trying to, not have to make you talk so much in your
Thank you.
weird natural park that you found. But
Jerry
with that,
is Florida man.
Thank you so much, everyone. We hope you found this valuable as we did, and we'll see you on the next show. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.